Merlot is a dark blue-colored wine grape variety that is used as both a blending grape and for varietal wines. The name Merlot is thought to be a diminutive of merle, the French name for the blackbird, probably a reference to the color of the grape. Its softness and fleshiness, combined with its earlier ripening, makes Merlot a popular grape for blending with the sterner, later-ripening Cabernet Sauvignon, which tends to be higher in tannin. Along with Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Malbec and Petit Verdot, Merlot is one of the primary grapes used in Bordeaux wine, and it is the most widely planted grape in the Bordeaux wine regions. Merlot is also one of the most popular red wine varietals in many markets. This flexibility has helped to make it one of the world's most planted grape varieties. As of 2004, Merlot was estimated to be the third most grown variety at 260,000 hectares globally, with an increasing trend. This puts Merlot just behind Cabernet Sauvignon's 262,000 hectares. While Merlot is made across the globe, there tends to be two main styles. The international style, favored by many New World wine regions, tends to emphasize late harvesting to gain physiological ripeness and produce inky, purple-colored wines that are full in body with high alcohol and lush, velvety tannins with intense plum and blackberry fruit. While this international style is practiced by many Bordeaux wine producers, the traditional Bordeaux style of Merlot involves harvesting Merlot earlier to maintain acidity and producing more medium-bodied wines with moderate alcohol levels that have fresh, red fruit flavors and potentially leafy, vegetal notes. History and name. The earliest recorded mention of Merlot was in the notes of a local Bordeaux official who in 1784 labeled wine made from the grape in the Libournais region as one of the area's best. In 1824, the word Merlot itself appeared in an article on Merlot wine where it was described that the grape was named after the local blackbird who liked eating the ripe grapes on the vine. Other descriptions of the grape from the 19th century called the variety Lucime d'Au Flube, with the grape thought to have originated on one of the islands found along the Garonne River. By the 19th century it was being regularly planted in the Merlot on the left bank of the Gironde. After a series of setbacks that includes a severe frost in 1956 and several vintages in the 1960s lost to rot, French authorities in Bordeaux banned new plantings of Merlot vines between 1970 and 1975. It was first recorded in Italy around Venice under the synonym Bordeaux in 1855. The grape was introduced to the Swiss from Bordeaux sometime in the 19th century and was recorded in the Swiss canton of Ticino between 1905 and 1910. In the 1990s, Merlot saw an upswing of popularity in the United States. Red wine consumption, in general, increased in the U.S. following the airing of the 60 Minutes report on the French paradox and the potential health benefits of wine and, possibly, the chemical resveratrol. The popularity of Merlot stemmed in part from the relative ease in pronouncing the name of the wine as well as its softer, fruity profile that made it more approachable to some wine drinkers. Parentage and relationship to other grapes. In the late 1990s, researchers at University of California, Davis showed that Merlot is an offspring of Cabernet Franc and is a half-sibling of Cabernet, Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon. The identity of the second parent of Merlot wouldn't be discovered till the late 2000s when an obscure and unnamed variety, first sampled in 1996 from vines growing in an abandoned vineyard in Saint-Souliac in Brittany, was shown by DNA analysis to be the mother of Merlot. This grape, later discovered in front of houses as a decorative vine in the villages of Figes, Mainx, Saint-Sauvignon and Tanzic in the Poitou-Charentes, was colloquially known as Madeleine or raisin de la Madeleine due to its propensity to be fully ripe and ready for harvest around the July 22 feast day of Mary Magdalene. As the connection to Merlot became known, the grape was formally registered under the name Magdalene Noire des Charentes. Through its relationship with Magdalene Noire des Charentes, Merlot is related to the southwest France wine grape Bordeaux, though the exact nature of that relationship is not yet known. Grape breeders have used Merlot crossed with other grapes to create several new varieties including Carmine, Edrina, Evmolpia, Fertlia, Mamaia, Nigra, Protest and Rebo. Over the years, Merlot has spawned on color mutation that is used commercially, a pink-skinned variety known as Merlot Gris. However, unlike the relationship between its Grenache Noir and Grenache Blanc, Pinot Noir and Pinot Blanc, the variety known as Merlot Blanc is not a color mutation but rather an offspring variety of Merlot crossing with Fol Blanc. Viticulture. Merlot grapes are identified by the loose bunches of large berries. The color has less of a blue-black hue than Cabernet Sauvignon grapes and with a thinner skin and fewer tannins per unit volume. It normally ripens up to 2 weeks earlier than Cabernet Sauvignon. Also compared to Cabernet, Merlot grapes tend to have a higher sugar content and lower malic acid. Ampelographer J. M. Borsico has noted that Merlot has seemed to inherit some of the best characteristics from its parent varieties, its fertility and easy ripening ability from Magdalene Noire des Charentes and its color, tannin and flavor phenolic potential from Cabernet Franc. Merlot thrives in cold soil, particularly ferrous clay. The vine tends to bud early, which gives it some risk to cold frost, and its thinner skin increases its susceptibility to the viticultural hazard of botrytis bunch rot. If bad weather occurs during flowering, the Merlot vine is prone to develop coulure. The vine can also be susceptible to downy mildew and to infection by leafhopper insect varieties. Water stress is important to the vine, with it thriving in well-drained soil more so than at base of a slope. Pruning is a major component to the quality of the wine that is produced, with some producing believing it is best to prune the vine short. Wine consultant Michel Roland is a major proponent of reducing the yields of Merlot grapes to improve quality. The age of the vine is also important, with older vines contributing character to the resulting wine. A characteristic of the Merlot grape is the propensity to quickly overripen once it hits its initial ripeness level, sometimes in a matter of a few days. There are two schools of thought on the right time to harvest Merlot. The winemakers of Chateau Petrus favor early picking to best maintain the wine's acidity and finesse, as well as its potential for aging. Others, such as Roland, favor late picking and the added fruit body that comes with a little bit of over-ripeness. Wine regions. Merlot is one of the world's most widely planted grape variety, with plantings of the vine outpacing even the more well-known Cabernet Sauvignon in many regions, including the grape's homeland of France. Here, France is home to nearly 2/3 of the world's total plantings of Merlot. Beyond France, it is also grown in Italy, California, Romania, Australia, Argentina, Bulgaria, Canada, Chile, Greece, New Zealand, South Africa, Switzerland, Croatia, Hungary, Montenegro, Slovenia, Mexico, and other parts of the United States such as Washington, Virginia, and Long Island. It grows in many regions that also grow Cabernet Sauvignon but tends to be cultivated in the cooler portions portions of those areas. In areas that are too warm, Merlot will ripen too early. In places like Israel, Merlot is the second most widely planted grape variety after Cabernet Sauvignon, with 1,000 hectares in cultivation, making very New World-style wines. The grape can also be found in Turkey with 429 hectares in 2010, as well as Malta and Cyprus. France. Merlot is the most commonly grown grape variety in France. In 2004, total French plantations stood at 115,000 hectares. By 2009, that number had risen slightly to 115,746 hectares. It is most prominent in southwest France in regions like Bordeaux, Bergerac and Cahors, where it is often blended with Malbec. The largest recent increase in Merlot plantations has occurred in the south of France, such as Languedoc-Roussillon, where it is often made under the designation of Vin de Pays wine. Here, Merlot accounted for 29,914 hectares, more than doubling the 11,000 hectares devoted to Cabernet Sauvignon in the Languedoc. In the traditional Bordeaux blend, Merlot role is to add body and softness. Despite accounting for 50 to 60% of overall plantings in Bordeaux, the grape tends to account for an average of 25% of the blends, especially in the Bordeaux wine regions of Graves and Meurcouet-d'Oc. Of these left bank regions, the commune of Saint-Estèphe uses the highest percentage of Merlot in the blends. However, Merlot is much more prominent on the right bank of the Gironde in the regions of Pomerol and Saint-Emilion, where it will commonly comprise the majority of the blend. One of the most famous and rare wines in the world, Chateau Petrus, is almost all Merlot. In Pomerol, where Merlot usually accounts for around 80% of the blend, the iron clay soils of the region give Merlot more of a tannic backbone than what is found in other Bordeaux regions. It was in Pomerol that the garagists' movement began, with small-scale production of highly sought-after Merlot-based wines. In the sandy, clay limestone-based soils of Saint-Emilion, Merlot accounts for around 60% of the blend and is usually blended with Cabernet Franc. In limestone, Merlot tends to develop more perfume notes, while in sandy soils the wines are generally softer than Merlot grown in clay-dominant soils. Merlot can also be found in significant quantities in Provence, Loire Valley, Savoie, Ardèche, Charente, Corrèze, Drôme, Isère and Vienne, Italy. In Italy, there were 25,614 hectares of the grape planted in 2000, with more than two-thirds of Italian Merlot being used in Indicazione Geografica Tibita blends versus being used in classified Denominazione di origine controllata e Denominazione di origine controllata garantita wines. A large portion of Merlot is planted in the Friuli wine region, where it is made as a varietal or sometimes blended with Cabernet Sauvignon or Cabernet Franc. In other parts of Italy, such as the Maremma coast in Tuscany, it is often blended with Sangiovese to give the wine a similar softening effect as the Bordeaux blends. Italian Merlots are often characterized by the light bodies and herbal notes. Merlot low acidity serves as a balance for the higher acidity in many Italian wine grapes, with the grape often being used in blends in the Veneto, Alto Adige and Umbria. Global warming is potentially having an influence on Italian Merlot, as more cooler climate regions in northern Italy are being able to ripen the grape successfully, while other regions already planted are encountering issues with overripeness. According to Master of Wine Jancis Robinson, some of the higher quality Italian Merlots are often from vineyards planted with cuttings sourced from France. Robinson describes the style of fruity Merlots from regarded estates as having potentially a pomerol quality to them, while Merlots from the warm plains of the Veneto can often be overripe with high yields, giving them a sweet and sour quality. Robinson notes that the Merlots from Trentino Alto Adige can fall somewhere between those of Friuli and the Veneto. The Strada del Merlot is a popular tourist route through Italian Merlot regions along the Isonzo River, Spain and Portugal. In the hot continental climate of many of Spain's major wine regions, Merlot is less valued than it is in the damp maritime climate of Bordeaux or the warm Mediterranean climate of the Tuscan coast. But as the popularity of international varieties continue to grow on the world wine market, Spanish wine producers have been experimenting with the variety, with even winemakers in Rioja petitioning authorities to allow Merlot to be a permitted grape to be blended with Tempranillo in the red wines of the region. In 2008, there were 13,325 hectares of Merlot, a significant increase from the 8,700 hectares that were being cultivated in the country only 4 years earlier. The largest concentration of the grape is in the Mediterranean climate of Catalonia, with 3,360 hectares in 2008, with the grape also showing some potential in the cooler climate wine region of Conca de Barbera in Tarragona. In Costas del Segre, the grape is often used in Bordeaux-style blend, while in Aragon in 2008, Navarre in 2008, and Castilla-La Mancha, sometimes blending with Tempranillo and other local Spanish wine grape varieties. Spain's neighbor on the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal, has only a very limited amount of Merlot compared to the abundance of native Portuguese grape varieties, with 556 hectares planted in 2010, mostly in the Portuguese wine regions along the Tagus River. Central Europe. In Germany, there were 450 hectares of Merlot growing in 2008, with the grape mostly planted in the warmer German wine regions of the Palatinate and Rhine-Hessen. In Switzerland, Merlot accounts for nearly 85% of the wine production in Ticino, where it is often made in a pale white in Merlot style. In 2009, there were 1,028 hectares plantings of Swiss Merlot. Plantings of Merlot have increased in recent years in the Austrian wine region of Burgenland, where vineyards previously growing Welsh Riesling are being uprooted to make room for more plantings. The grape still lags behind its parent variety, Cabernet Franc, with 112 hectares in cultivation in 2008. Outside of Burgenland, nearly half of all Austrian Merlot plantings are found in Lower Austria. In Slovenia, Merlot was the most widely planted grape variety of any color in the Vipava Valley in the Slovene littoral, and the second most widely planted variety in the Gorizia Hills located across the Italian border from Friuli. In the Slovene littoral, collectively, Merlot accounts for around 15% of total vineyard plantings, with 1,019 hectares of Merlot in cultivation across Slovenia in 2009. Rest of Europe. In the Eastern European countries of Bulgaria, Moldova, Croatia and Romania, Merlot is often produced as a full-bodied wine that can be very similar to Cabernet Sauvignon. In Bulgaria, plantings of Merlot lag slightly behind Cabernet Sauvignon, with 15,202 hectares in 2009, while Croatia had 1,105 hectares. In the Czech Republic, most of the countries 87 hectares were found in Moravia, while Moldova had 8,123 hectares in 2009. In Hungary, Merlot complements Kek Frankost, Kekorbot and Kardarka as a component in bull's blood. It is also made into varietal wine known as Igri Emi Acute Diocinois, which is noted for its balanced acid levels and sweet taste. In 2009, there were 1,791 hectares of Merlot planted across Hungary. Most of these hectares can be found in the wine regions of Szuchard and Volhynia on the warm Pannonian Basin, with significant plantings also found in Kuntsag, Aga and Balaton. In Romania, Merlot is the most widely exported red wine grape variety with 10,782 hectares in cultivation in 2008. Most of these plantings are found along the Black Sea in Dobrija, further inland in the Muntenia region of Dilumea, and in the western Romanian wine region of Dragășani. Here the grape is often made a varietal but is sometimes blended with other international varieties such as Cabernet Sauvignon and with local grape varieties such as Fetească Neagră. In 2009, Ukraine had 2,820 hectares of Merlot in cultivation. Russia had 1,588 hectares. In Greece, Merlot is one of the top 6 grape varieties planted in the eastern wine regions of Macedonia and western Thrace. In central Greece there were 74 hectares of Merlot in cultivation as of 2012. United States. Merlot is grown across the United States, with California and Washington growing the most. Other regions producing significant quantities of Merlot include New York State with 365 hectares in 2006, with most of it in the maritime climate of the Long Island Ava. In Texas, Merlot is the second most widely planted red wine grape after Cabernet Sauvignon with 117 hectares. In Virginia, the grape was the most widely planted red variety with 136 hectares in 2010, most of it in the Monticello Ava and Shenandoah Valley Ava, while Oregon had 206 hectares in 2008, with most planted in the Rogue Valley Ava. California. In the early history of California wine, Merlot was used primarily as a 100% varietal wine until winemaker Warren Winiarski encouraged taking the grape back to its blending roots with Bordeaux-style blends. Following the Merlot wine craze of the 1990s sparked by 60 Minutes' French Paradox report, sales of Merlot spiked, with the grape hitting its peak plantings of over 20,640 hectares in 2004. The 2004 movie Sideways is often credited with declining Merlot sales that followed after its release. By 2010, plantings of California Merlot had dropped slightly to 18,924 hectares. In California, Merlot can range from very fruity simple wines to more serious, barrel-aged examples. It can also be used as a primary component in Parentage blends. While Merlot is grown throughout the state, it is particularly prominent in Napa, Monterey and Sonoma County. In Napa, examples from Los Carneros, Mount Vida, Oakville and Rutherford tend to show ripe blackberry and black raspberry notes. Sonoma Merlots from Alexander Valley, Carneros and Dry Creek Valley tend to show plum, tea leaf and black cherry notes. Washington State. In the 1980s, Merlot helped put the Washington wine industry on the world's wine map. Prior to this period, there was a general perception that the climate of Washington State was too cold to produce red wine varietals. Merlots from Leonette Cellar, Andrew Will, Columbia Crest and Chateau Sand Michel demonstrated that areas of the eastern Washington were warm enough for red wine production. Today it is the second most widely grown red wine grape in the state, following many years of being the most widely planted variety, and accounts for nearly one-fifth of the state's entire production. In 2011, there were 3,334 hectares of Washington Merlot in cultivation. It is widely planted throughout the Columbia Valley but has earned particular notice from plantings grown in Walla Walla, Red Mountain and the Horse Heaven Hills. Washington Merlots are noted for their deep color and balanced acidity. The state's climate lends itself towards long days and hours of sunshine with cool nights that contributes to a significant diurnal temperature variation and produces wines with New World fruitiness and Old World structure. Canada. In Canada, Merlot can be found across the country from Ontario, where there were 498 hectares of the grape in 2008, to British Columbia, where the grape is the most widely planted wine grape variety of either color at 641 hectares. Here Merlot accounts for almost a third of all red wine grape plantings and is used for both varietal and Bordeaux-style blends. Mexico. In Mexico, Merlot is cultivated primarily in the Valle de Guadalupe of Baja California, the country's main wine-producing area. Plantings have increased substantially since the 1980s, and cultivation has spread into the nearby areas of Ojos Negros and Santo Tomas. The grape can also be found in the northeastern Mexican wine region of Coahuila, across the border from Texas. South America. In Chile, Merlot thrives in the Apalta region of Colchagua province. It is also grown in significant quantities in Curicó, Casablanca and the Maipo Valley. Until the early 1990s, the Chilean wine industry mistakenly sold a large quantity of wine made from the Cabernet grape as Merlot. Following the discovery that many Chilean vineyards thought to be planted with Sauvignon Blanc was actually Sauvignon Assay, the owners of the Chilean winery Domaine Paul Bruno invited ampelographers to comb through the vineyards to make sure that the wines were properly identified. Genetic studies discovered that much of what had been grown as Merlot was actually Cabernet, an old French variety that had gone largely extinct in France due to its poor resistance to phylloxera. While the vines, leaves and grapes look very similar, both grapes produce wines with distinct characteristics, Cabernet being more strongly flavored with green pepper notes and Merlot having softer, fruit with chocolate notes. Today, true Merlot is the third most widely planted grape variety in Chile after Cabernet Sauvignon and List and Prieto with 13,280 hectares in 2009. Most of these planting are in the Central Valley, with Colchagua leading the way with 3,359 hectares, followed by Maule Valley with 3,019 hectares, and Curicó with 2,911 hectares. In Argentina, Merlot plantings have been increasing in the Mendoza region, with the grape showing an affinity to the Tupangata region of the Ucio Valley. Argentine Merlots grown in the higher elevations of Tupangata have shown a balance of ripe fruit, tannic structure and acidity. The grape is not as widely planted here due to the natural fruity and fleshiness of the popular Malbec and Bonarda grapes that often don't need to be mellowed by Merlot, as Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc may benefit from. In 2008, there were 7,142 hectares of Merlot growing in Argentina, most of it in the Mendoza region and in the San Juan province. In Uruguay, Merlot is often blended with Tannar and is the second most widely planted red grape variety, representing around 10% of total vineyard plantings. More widely planted than Cabernet Sauvignon, there were 853 hectares of the grape in cultivation in 2000. 2009. Brazil is home to 1,089 hectares of Merlot, with most of them in the Rio Grande do Sul region that is across the border with Uruguay. Other South American wine regions growing Merlot include Bolivia with 30 hectares as of 2012 and Peru. Oceania, South Africa and Asia. In New Zealand, plantings of Merlot have increased in the Hawke's Bay region, particularly in gimbled gravels where the grape has shown the ability to produce Bordeaux-style wine. The grape has been growing in favour among New Zealand producers due to its ability to ripen better, with less green flavours, than Cabernet Sauvignon. Other regions with significant plantings include Auckland, Marlborough and Martinborough. In 2008, Merlot was the second most widely read grape variety in New Zealand and accounted for nearly 5% of all the country's plantings, with 1,363 hectares in cultivation. In Australia, some vineyards labelled as Merlot were discovered to actually be Cabernet Franc. Merlot vines can also be found growing in the Barossa Valley, McLaren Vale and Rathbully in South Australia. In 2008, it was the third most widely planted red grape variety after Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon, with 10,537 hectares. As in California, the global Merlot craze spurred an increase of plantings, most of it in the warm, irrigated regions of Murray-Darling, Riverina and Riverland, where the grape variety could be mass-produced. Recent plantings, such as those in the Margaret River area of Western Australia, have been focusing on making more Bordeaux-style blends. In South Africa, plantings of Merlot have focused on cooler sites within the Paarl and Stellenbosch regions. Here, the grape is the third most widely planted red grape variety, accounting for nearly 15% of all red wine grape plantings, with 6,614 hectares of Merlot in cultivation in 2008. The majority of these plantings are found in the Stellenbosch region with 2,105 hectares, and Paarl with 1,289 hectares. According to wine expert Jancis Robinson, South African Merlot tend to be made as a varietal in a chocolatey, glossy California style. In Asia, Merlot is planted in emerging wine regions in India. It can also be found in Japan with 816 hectares in 2009 and in China with 3,204 hectares.